So, guys, welcome to this last lecture in the series that is approaching astrophysics. And in this lecture, we'll be seeing about the galaxies, the different properties, types of galaxies, and a basic idea about dark matter, okay, different shifts, and then we'll come. Okay, next slide, please. So, first, what is a galaxy? So, galaxy is defined as the collection of huge matter floating in space. Okay, that is gravitationally bound system consisting of planets, stars, interstellar gas, and dust, and possibly unseen dark matter. And in some time, we'll see why we consider the dark matter to exist here. So, galaxy typically contains, I'm sorry, it should be 10 to the power 7 and 10 to the power 12. So, galaxy contains 10 to the power 7 to 10 to the power 12 stars, apart from other objects orbiting around the center of gravity of the galaxy. So the space between the galaxies is known as the intergalactic space, and it is usually filled with genus plasma having an average density of less than one atom per cubic meter. You can see how much. What is the density over there? It is very, very less. So next slide, please. So basically, there are based on their physical structures, the galaxies are categorized into three types. They are elliptical galaxy, the spiral galaxy, and irregular galaxy. So the elliptical and spiral galaxies are further classified into groups based on their degree of ellipse, number of spirals, and definition of something called a bar. So this system of the galaxy classification is known as the Hubble sequence because it was classified based on Hubble's rule or his idea. So here you can see the classification, the diagram for the classification scheme, and it is similar to what we see. The usual representation for the Big Bang theory, right? The expansion of the universe, but it has nothing to do with that. It just seems as that it has nothing to do with the time lapse, but it is just the representation of different sizes and orientations of the different elliptical and spiral galaxies. Next slide. So classification of galaxies based on Hubble sequence. So this diagram which I've shown here is also known as the tuning fork diagram because it resembles the tuning fork, okay, in the lab which you've seen. So this classification of galaxies was developed by Edwin Hubble in the year 1936. So it begins from the left with elliptical galaxies, which form the base of this diagram. This and it is important to note that the tuning fork sequence has nothing to do with the evolution of galaxies, like I've said before. But the reasons to believe that the elliptical galaxies in general are there are reasons to believe that they believe that the elliptical galaxies are older than the spiral galaxies. Okay, so in the elliptical galaxies, in the diagram, if you see a capital letter E represents that the galaxy is elliptical, and the number there show the I mean the geometry of the elliptical. The geometry of the galaxy basically. So the number attached to it, they are named from E0 to E7. Okay, so E0 has the shape of a ball, okay, which could be a giant globular cluster. So E7 is the shape of a discus, that is the most flattened galaxy. And the first one, that is E0, is basically a sphere, or because we see it as a circle. So the range of the I'm sorry. Yeah. So the range of the letters is explained below. For this is for spiral galaxies. So then we go on to the spiral galaxies from SO. They are from SO to SA, SB, SC. They are named, and SA, that is the central, the bright central disk. It's smooth but tightly wound arms. So SP is the arms are slightly widened or it is loosened. So SC is much looser and the arms are clearly visible as we go towards A, B, C, and so on. So next slide. So the lower branch is for the barred spiral galaxies. So what is a barred spiral galaxy? And it is just a spiral galaxy with a band of stars emerging from the center and running across the middle of the galaxy. unlike the normal spiral galaxy. So the subscript lowercase indicates, I mean, here in the for the barred spiral galaxies, there will be a special one more letter or one more letter associated apart from SB and all. So, for example, if so there is called something, let's say SBA, and it is a bright central region and tightly spaced spirals. So the spirals are tightly spaced. They are widened, but they are tightly spaced. So the number of spirals, basically, okay, if you see the figure, you understand that the subscript here represents the number of spirals it has. So the most largest, that is, if we take the SBC, that has a dimmer central portion having even looser arms than SB subscript B. Next slide. So this is the general classification. So apart from the Hubble's classification, which is limited to certain types of galaxies, we don't in Hubble sequence we don't take into consideration all the galaxies that we see in the night sky, but there are some special properties associated. So based on that, the Hubble classified the galaxies. So apart from this, the whole galaxy may be classified as follows. We'll see one by one and their explanations in short. So first one would be the elliptical galaxy. So the elliptical galaxies can be from E0 to E7, as we have seen earlier. So this number indicates only how the galaxies appear in the sky for us. I mean, with respect to the humans on Earth, and not its true geometry. It has nothing to do with how it is oriented. So E0 galaxies are almost round in shape, the sphere, which is actually it, but we see it as a circle because it is 2D as we see. And while the E7 galaxies are greatly flattened. So the elliptical galaxies have an ellipsoidal shape with fairly even distribution of stars throughout. So the stars are evenly distributed throughout the galaxy. So the subscript number n, that is here E1, let it be E1 or E2, that 1, 2 and all, the number relates to the eccentricity of the ellipse, having a semi-major axis A and a semi-minor axis B, and it is evaluated, the number is evaluated by the given formula, that is n is equal to and 10 multiplied with 1 minus b by a. So you can see for a circle or a sphere, b will be equal to a, and it becomes 1, so n will be 0. So for elliptical galaxy E0, it appears as a circle. So next one would be lenticular galaxy. That is only the among all the spiral galaxies, only the S0 and SB0 fall into this category. So these galaxies appear to have a disk type structures with a spherical bulge at the center. This is the normal galaxies, I think, which is shown figures. I mean, normally, generally we show it, and they do not show any spiral arms normally, because we have seen that as we go far away, that is SB, SB, SC, the spiral arms are loosened and they are uh, clearly visible. But here, because they are very close, we can't see the spiral arms very clearly, and hence, yeah, we can just consider them as a point or just a central bulge. Okay, next slide. So next would be the spiral galaxies. These galaxies range from SA to SD. So these galaxies have the spiral galaxies we've already explained. So it has a central bulge and an outlying disk consisting of spiral arms. These arms are centered about the bulge and vary from tightly wound, that is SA, to very loosely wound, that is SC and ST. So SC and ST have less pronounced central bulges when compared to SA and ST. So next would be barred spiral galaxies. Even this we have discussed. That is, these galaxies have spiral structures similar to the spiral galaxies, but the arms, instead of oozing out of the bulge, are projected out from the ends of the bar, running into the bulge, towards the bulge. So SBA have the most tightly wound arms. Here again, SBA to SBT, I mean D, refer to how tightly these arms are wound around the central bulge. Next slide. So the last type of galaxy, that is named as the irregular galaxies. So in these galaxies, we don't see any type of symmetry or any type of known geometry. So they are just classified as irregular galaxy, and they are further divided into two categories. There, IRR1, that is irregular 1, and irregular 2. So the irregular 1 type of galaxies show a spiral structure but are deformed in some way, whereas the irregular 2 type of galaxies are those galaxies which do not fit into any set category. So here you can see some number that is associated with the mass, luminosity, diameter, that is the size and amount of stars present, and how much they are observed in the galaxy. So we can see the spiral and the barred spiral galaxies are the highest. They are 77% observed, and elliptical 20% and irregular are the least, and they constitute only 3% of the Euclid galaxies. So we can see how the masses and brightness and size are distributed among these type of galaxies. So next slide. So a little bit deep into what are elliptical galaxies. So the size and mass of these galaxies widely vary. Okay, so they can be as small as 0.1 kiloparsec to 100 kiloparsec, which is fantastical, very large separation. So while the masses also vary from 10 power 7 to 10 power 13, the mass of the sun. So the smallest type among these galaxies are known as the dwarf elliptical galaxies. Okay? So which may not be larger than even a typical globular cluster, but may contain considerable mass in the form of dark matter. The motion of the stars within the frame of the galaxy is dominated by randomness. No, generally, I mean, mostly dominated by randomness. So these galaxies contain few young stars, very little interstellar matter, and few open star clusters. The star cluster clusters and all we'll be seeing in the later part of the lecture in detail. So they also contain certain old stars, the so-called population 2 stars. So it has been found that the larger elliptical galaxies have a system globular clusters, which indicate an old population. So it is also believed that in these galaxies, the star population has come to end. So in elliptical galaxies, we believe that the star formation has come to the end, and even if there is star formation, that is very very little and not very considerable. So these galaxy uh, these galaxies also appear in yellow red in color, which is contrast to the normal distinct blue. Okay? So these galaxies are also thought to be formed by galaxy mergers. So galaxy mergers is nothing but the merging of two galaxies. So our the Milky Way galaxy, that is the home which we live in, that is our home, is also even a Milky Way galaxy is known to be digesting a couple of considerably small galaxies currently. So here you can see the examples of elliptical galaxies. So next slide. So this is an image of the of an elliptical galaxy. You can see the ellipse is clearly visible in the center of the white part. So yeah, next slide. So next is a spiral galaxies. Okay, these galaxies consist of a dense central part, a central bulge attached to arms which rotate around its center. So the galaxy appears like a spiral from a distance to us. In other words, the arms form a disc-like structure with a bulge at its center. Okay, there's a figure in the next slide which I'll show you. Okay, so in 1964, that is the first acceptable theory came in from Frank Shu and Lin. So they suggested their suggestion was that the spiral arms were the manifestations of spiral density waves. So thus the stars do not remain in fixed positions, uh, which we now see them. So, but they all pass through the arms as they travel in their own orbits around the galactic center. So, for a long time, our Milky Way galaxy also was thought to be a pure spiral galaxy, but recent research from the Spitzer Space Telescope suggests that it is a barred spiral galaxy. We have seen what is a barred spiral galaxy, right? So, next slide. So this is the this is a diagram of the spiral galaxies. You can see how it is formed. So next slide. So next would be the irregular galaxies. So the irregular galaxies are those which do not fall into the Hubble classification for galaxies. So in other words, they are neither spiral nor elliptical and often have a chaotic appearance. There is a lot of randomness going on there. So uh, neither a nuclear pulse nor a spiral arm can be traced out of the structure. So collectively, they form like one fourth of all the galaxies that we see. So it is believed that most irregular galaxies were once spiral and or elliptical galaxies, and they become irregular due to the gravitational uh, action of gravitation. They get deformed by the action of gravitation. So here you can see a diagram, a picture of irregular galaxy. So next slide. So next we come to our Milky Way galaxy. So the Milky Way galaxy is our home or the galaxy in which we live. So the name Milky Way originated from the appearance of the galaxy as a white hazy band of white light on the night sky which you observe running like a road. So it was named as a Milky Way galaxy. So this band is a result of this light, that is this hazy white light, that is a result of billions of stars existing within our Milky Way galaxy in the galactic plane. So it appears the brightest in the direction of Sagittarius, which is towards the galactic center. So the Milky Way divides the night sky into two equal hemispheres. This we have seen in the coordinate systems in, I think, the second lecture, how it is divided based on the coordinates. Yeah. So the diameter of the disk of the Milky Way galaxy spans between 80,000 to 100,000 light years. So, but the thickness is just 1,000 light years. So you can see it is just as a disk, right, when compared to the diameter that is like 80 times more. So yeah, next slide. So the central object of the galaxy is strongly suspected to be a supermassive black hole called Sagittarius A. So which is a very bright and compact source of radio emission. So like any other galaxies, the distribution is such that the orbital speed doesn't strongly depend on the distance from the galactic center or this center of the central force motion. So away from the central pulse, the typical stellar velocity ranges you can see here, that is 210 to 240 kilometers per second. So the orbital period of the stars follow a completely different law compared to the solar system. So in solar system, we can roughly calculate the speed, the orbital speed of the planets, depending on the mass enclosed, right, enclosed by the orbit. But here it will vary a lot. So this is a theoretical explanation. Here comes into the picture called dark matter. So we suspect that there should be something called dark matter. So the orbital speed shows the correct data. So next slide. So next we come to the rotation of galaxies. So the orbital speed of an object going around another object is the speed. It is the speed at which it orbits around the center, or the barycenter as we call it, as of the solar system. In case of a small mass orbiting a much heavier mass, the barycenter is almost at the center of the massive body. Okay, because the center of mass of the two bodies will exist inside the massive mass object. So the orbital speed at any position in the orbit can be computed from the distance of the central body at that position. So here is the formula which we calculate, from which we calculate the orbital speed, and it is under root gm multiplied by 2 by r minus 1 by a. So when r is nearly equal to a, so it becomes 2 minus 1 by r. So it is gm by r. This is what we, this is what we derived, I think, and our mechanics course. In usual mechanics course, we derive this equation for the orbital velocity. So this was just a very small introduction to the orbital speed. So next slide. So here we come to the galaxy groups, clusters, and superclusters. So the early stage of the universe, that is just after the Big Bang, it is believed to be very smooth and featureless. That is, no order, or there is no sort of orderliness. So with evolution in time, it gradually developed itself. The universe gradually developed itself, and it became orderly, or it became organized. So the planets revolve around the sun and form the solar system. Similarly, the sun, along with billions of stars, uh, revolve around with dust revolve around the galactic center of our Milky Way galaxy, and like this, it just goes on and on. So as we move up in scale, we find that galaxies also, just like the billions of stars in our galaxy, the different galaxies also organize themselves in groups which are both small and large. These groups include the galaxy and maybe other material which is within the intergalactic space, that is the space between two galaxies. So these are considered to be the densest parts when the universe is studied as a large scale structure. So depending on the mass, these groups of gravitationally bound systems may be classified into three groups, that are the galaxy groups, clusters, and superclusters. So next slide. They are explained below, the three classifications. So first one would be the groups of galaxies. So they are the smallest aggregates of galaxies and typically contain just less than 50 galaxies. Estimated mass is nearly like 10 to the power 13 mass of the sun, within a diameter of 1 to 2 megaparsecs. So the spread of the velocities for individual galaxies is given calculated to be 150 kilometers per second. So the group to which our Milky Way galaxy belongs is called the local group, and it contains like more than 40 galaxies. Okay. So this definition of groups of galaxies should be used as just a guide only, and since the larger and more massive galaxy systems are also classified as galaxy groups, they are also given the name as galaxy groups. So next one would be the clusters of galaxies. So still larger groups, that is, in groups of galaxies, we have taken like 1 to 50 galaxies, and here more than 50, that is 50 to 1000 galaxies, hot X-ray emitting gas, and large amounts of dark matter they contain. So the distribution of three components is roughly the same within each cluster, and the estimated mass is between 10 power 14 to 10 power 15 the mass of the sun, within a diameter of 2 to 10 megaparsec. So the speed of velocity is calculated to be 800 to 1000 kilometers per second. So next slide. So next comes the superclusters. So even more galaxies, group of galaxies when compared to the clusters are superclusters. And on an even larger scale of visualization, they are called superclusters, and they consist of groups, clusters, and even more isolated galaxies. It was once the supercluster was once thought of a larger structure in nature, but today it is known as the subordinate of the larger structure, called the supercluster complexes. So these superclusters range from 10 to 150 megaparsec. So here is a figure that shows a map of the nearest supercluster. There is a lot of randomness here. There are names and you cannot see it clearly. So this is the nearest observable supercluster. So next slide. So next we come to something called the gravitational lensing, which is which is an apparent phenomenon that is observed. So this is just an introduction, and we are not diving very deep into what is gravitational lensing. So Einstein's GTR, that is the general relativity, predicts that when a large amount of matter is accumulated in space on a space-time curvature, space-time curvature is formed around the object due to its own gravitational forces. So for such actions, a substantial amount of mass is required within a small space, since the gravitational force, as we know, is very weak in nature. So when a light or an electromagnetic radiation passes in this region, it bends due to the curvature in the space-time. Okay, so Einstein showed this phenomena during an eclipse when the light from a star behind the sun was able to reach Earth during the eclipse. So here you can, it is just a figure that shows how the curvature is formed in the space-time fabric. So next slide. Okay, so this is a diagram which shows that the light, gravitational lensing, that is light from, I'm sorry, so light from a distant galaxy reaching the Earth after getting bent by gravity. You see there, let's consider this as sun. So due to the bend in the space-time fabric, the light has to, uh, due to the curvature in the space-time fabric, the light has to bend before reaching the Earth. So the darker arrow here, which is supposed to be orange, but here it is just dark, and the darker arrow shows the apparent position of the background source. So if we draw a straight line according to what we observe the light coming from, so it is just the apparent source, and the white arrow shows the white arrow shows the actual path traversed by the light. So multiple images of single source might be observed during this phenomenon. So note that so if the observer source and the massive object are in the same straight lines, the image of the, I'm sorry. Yeah. So addition. So when they are in a straight line, the image source will appear like a ring behind the massive object. Okay, so this phenomenon is usually referred to as the Einstein ring, and was first mentioned by August Schwarzen in 1924, and later quantified and explained by Einstein in 1936. Next slide. So these are the properties of gravitational lens. The gravitational lensing type strong. When it is strong, the distortion of the background object is easily visible. That is formation of Einstein rings. So when the lensing type is weak, the distortions are much smaller and can be only detected by analyzing the large number of objects. So micro is very small. That is, the distortions are not visible in shape, but the amount of light received from a background object varies with time. So these are the properties of different types of gravitational lensing. So next slide. Yeah, this was my presentation, and over to Achit.
So, hi guys. So now, as we studied in the previous lecture by Roshan, that spiral galaxies have spiral arms. Now we'll get to know as to why, like, how these spiral arms were originated and like how are they still going on with that only. Next slide. So what are the like observational clues? Like we can, it is seen in disk that contain gases, but not in gas poor exogalaxy disks. And it is mainly defined by blue light from not massive stars. Thus, lifetime is very less than galactic rotation period. So, like in previous lectures, like in HR diagrams, we have seen like in main sequence, the stars are like they are blue in color and they are young stars. Like they are not in that giant stage and going out of their time period. So yeah, so from that there we can come to know like there are those stars are in spiral arms. Next slide. So, so this was so the reason is spiral density waves. So the orbits in spiral galaxy are not quite circles, like they are in elliptic shape and they are slightly tilted at an angle with to each other. So there are regions which have like, so these, the place that they were tilted have higher density than the other. So like there is a difference in have highest surroundings. So this means like if the higher the density, then higher gravity. So objects like gas cloud will be attracted to these regions and will drift towards them. Next slide. So like how these spiral density waves helps in star formation. So when, as we all know, like all those gas clouds get attracted towards that high density area, so like these collides and the stars are formed. So this is where like most of the stars takes place. So these are newly formed stars including luminous O and B stars, which are very luminous, and it will they will continue to drift through the region. So the brightest and the bluest OB stars explode within a few million years and thus don't go far from the spiral arms where they were born. Next slide. So like as we can see, this is like a spiral galaxy. At the starting we have a dust lane of those gas clouds, then we have young OB stars, and then after their, when they die, the nebula, then there come older stars, and we can see the high density behind arm also. So this is how like what a spiral arm or a spiral galaxy consists of. Next slide. So like this is an example of here we can see outsides like dust clouds, then there see the bright stars, OB stars, and then how they are going in sequence, then there are nebulas and all. Yep. Next slide. So how now particularly we'll talk about star formation in spiral arms. So spiral density waves create special arms by gravitational attraction of the stars and gas flowing through the arms. So even if there is no star formation, like in some galaxies, like there is no formation of stars, so there would be stellar arms, but star formation what makes them more prominent. So and this what we call them as grand design spirals. Like it would be very beautiful and like very attracting to see like those grand designs if stars are formed in the spiral arm. Next slide we'll see like how the difference between those. Yeah. And the star formation can self-propagate in a differentially rotating disk. Example, a supernova shock compresses neighboring molecular clouds. So like they could self-propagate also in a differentially rotating disk. So like we know like a spiral galaxy, they rotate different, the matter inside rotates differential, that the material at the inner side, like inside, like close to the center, will have more velocity as compared to the material at outside. So that's what we call differentially rotating. So this may be responsible for the branches and spurs in spiral arms or disks without even evident spiral density waves. So the galaxies where like there are no evident spiral density waves are called flocculent spirals. Next slide. So this is an example of grand designs. We can see like how beautiful and how like properly it is, like first the gas clouds, then the OB stars, then the nebulae and the older stars, how it's going on. Yeah, the next slide. See, and in this is a flocculent spiral galaxy. Here we can say there's like no such thing as like a proper what do we say to that, proper, sorry, yeah, so like no proper thing like the symmetry and anything. Yeah. Next slide. So now another thing that we encounter in galaxies is the dark matter. Like what is what is dark matter in real? Like in our second lecture we have seen the we have proved as through Virial theorem like how we come to know like there is something called suspicious matter, some suspicious matter in our galaxy. But now we will study in detail about it, not that much detail, but yes. Next slide. So this is a rotation curve of galaxy. So as we can see, according to like Newtonian gravitation, the orbit, the planets or the, the planets close to the center, okay, the center should be fast, and then it should eventually go on decreasing the speed of the orbital speed of other planets and stars. But as we can see, it doesn't go, so it doesn't decrease, it just goes through straight line after sun. So this was a suspicion as to why it happens. So next slide. So what in actually is dark matter? Atomic hydrogen clouds beyond our sun orbit faster than predicted by Kepler's laws, as we have seen in that rotation curve. So, and most of the galaxy's light comes from the stars closer to the center than the sun. And there is 5 to 6 times more dark matter than luminous matter in our galaxy, as we can see in this figure given alongside. That small circle and that blue color disk is a Milky Way galaxy or any galaxy. So we can see how small that galaxy is and this luminous matter as compared to that surrounded by black dark matter. And luminous matter is just confined to the disk, we can see in this figure. And dark matter is found in halo and far beyond luminous disk, like in halo regions, like what in simple layman terms, what we can say is like outskirts of a galaxy. Next slide. So how we determine like there is dark matter? So one way is mass to light ratio. So we know that we measure both mass and luminosity in solar units. Sorry. So within the orbit of sun, the ratio of mass and luminosity is 6 times for the Milky Way. And for the entire spirals, the mass to light ratio can be as high as 50 times the solar units. So from this, we conclude that the most matter in galaxies are not stars. The amount of M ratio L over 6 solar mass into solar luminosity is amount of dark matter. And it goes on increasing for like if we go further beyond. Next slide. So evidence indicate dark matter is like 6 to 7 times more invisible than the dark matter. So like this is very nice way of depicting like what dark matter is like. According to Kepler's law, we should have expected this curve, but we observe this. So why it is? Because of the dark matter. So the rotation speed of galaxies does not decline with radius, thus violating Kepler's law unless without a halo of unseen matter. Next slide. So, and other thing is gravitational lensing, as my friend Roshan talked about. So the light coming from the distant galaxy is bent by an intervening cluster to form little arcs, as like light is also affected by gravities and it bends by heavy objects around it. So those objects bend the light. So the amount of bending indicates a lot of unseen matter in the cluster. Next slide. So like this is a very nice illustration of the dark matter. If we see the actual path of the light, it's coming straight, and when there is dark matter, it getting bended and all we can see is this, like there is a difference in the there is a difference in observation and actual object. So light slightly from all distant galaxies is very distorted and bent as it travels through sea of dark matter. So with the best images, these distortions of 0.1% in shape can be only seen. Next slide. So yeah, in this galaxy cluster, if we can see this, like it is a formation of like two galaxies coming together and forming together. So is another called as bullet cluster, and the gas red collided and heated up to emit X-rays, while the dark matter that is in blue continued without an interaction. So gravity is operating, but not any of the EM radiation interactions. This is how we can see like there is a dark matter present, like it is affecting the mass of the body, but it is not affecting those radiations coming out from it. Okay, yeah, next slide. So now why astronomers are so confident that dark matter actually exists? Because there are number of experiments and observations done, and every time the law of gravity has passed all these tests. And if we put dark matter into computer simulations, we evolve structure that looks just like this universe given in this picture. And if we don't put, like, if in a simulation we don't put that dark matter in the beginning, then the image, like what simulation will get of our universe will not be that affecting and all. Yeah, next slide. So now another thing is like how we can explain dark matter was one this theory, supersymmetry. It is a very wide and hectic, what we can say, very that topic. But yeah, in short, I will tell you what was it. So it is an extension to standard model of particle physics that unifies fermions and bosons through a set of shadow particles of higher mass. So this theory has been around for 30 years in the field of physics, but has not yet proved useful. So what we can say, it's like a failure, or it's a dead end. Like we cannot, we cannot no longer believe and have our faith on supersymmetry so that it could unravel the mysteries of the universe and dark matter and dark energy. Next slide. Yeah, so this was like the desired model. Like two supersymmetric neutrinos will combine, fuse together to give subatomic particles like quarks, leptons, and bosons. So after the decay process, bosons will decay into protons, leptons will into neutrinos and antiprotons, and quarks, with that are low energy photons, will get converted into positrons and electrons. So this was like believed like it should have happened. So like, but it could not. We could not prove it. Yeah. So next slide. So how we can detect dark matter? Like, so it should be like deep in mines to shield from cosmic ray contaminating signals. And solid state detectors look for the rare recoil of dark matter particles with heavy atomic nuclei. So like when we get a 5 to 10 years 10 years data, then we could put those data together, and we hope that something positive comes out of from, and something positive comes out from those results. Next slide. Now the next thing that we're going to talk about is red and blue shifts and expansion and Hubble's law, like how we can say like our universe is expanding and all. Yeah. So we know, like we have studied in basic physics and elementary physics, Doppler effect, like a source emitting sound from a distance at speed v, then we can hear it if it is closer to us. The frequency of those source, sorry, so the frequency of of the source will be more if we are closer to the source, and it would be faded away if we go away from the source. So that is the, suppose a source emitting sound is moving away from you at speed v, and the speed of sound through air is c. So the frequency of the observer of the sound wave measured by an observer will be related to the frequency of emission at which sound is emitted by, given by nu of observer divided by nu of emission is equal to speed of light upon speed of light plus the velocity. So this is well known as Doppler effect. Next slide. So like if we consider the case of light, so it is a little bit more subtle. Like since the speed of light is c for and same for all the observers, and the relative speed between speed v between a light emitting source and observer cannot exceed c, because highest speed we can approach is speed of light. So the wavelengths of the light in the frames of the emitter and observer are then related by the wavelength of observer upon the wavelength of emitter is equal to frequency of light upon frequency of observer, that is 1 upon nu by c. So since the wavelength of observer is greater than the wavelength of emitter, so for a source moving away from us, a spectral line in the spectrum of the moving source will appear shifted towards the red side of the spectrum. So astronomers usually denote the red shift by the symbol Z, and it is defined by the ratio of wavelength of observer and emitter is equal to 1 plus Z. So next slide. So from the equations 2 and 3, we get the velocity is equal to ZC. So thus, the measuring of redshift of spectral lines in the spectrum of receding source, one can find the speed of recession V. So Hubble discovered that more faraway galaxies are receding from us at higher speeds, and he proposed a linear relationship between that, the length and the velocity, that which is V is equal to H naught L. So this is popularly known, the equation 5 is popularly known as Hubble's law, and H naught is known as Hubble constant. Next slide. For simplicity, like what we can say, like the significance is like if of Hubble's law in short, what we can say, like with that red and blue shift is like when we see the spectra of faraway stars or galaxies, so some of them appear as to be red, so we can say those are, according to that Doppler effect, these are moving away from us, else it would have been blue. So what Hubble observed all these things, and he came up with his Hubble law that this means that our universe is expanding. So for simplicity, we'll consider a plane surface which is expanding uniformly with some marks on it. Suppose O is an observer who is watching the two marks at A and B. The distances to A and B from O are respectively LA and LB, such that, next slide, LB is equal to alpha LA. After the plane has expanded uniformly for time dt, the change distances of A and B will also satisfy the similar relation that LB plus DLB is equal to alpha bracket LA plus DLA. So now, virtue of uniformity of expansion, so hence we get DLB, rate of change of LB is equal to alpha times the rate of change of LA. Since the time derivative of distance is nothing but the recession velocity from point O, that the observer, so we can write this as VB is equal to alpha VA. Now, if we see equations 6 and 7, if we put them together, what we get, VB upon VA is equal to LB upon LA, which confirms nothing but Hubble's law, like when we increase the distance, the velocity also increases. Yeah. Next slide. So thus various points in the plane will appear to move away from point O, obeying Hubble's law that the recession velocity is proportional to the distance. Now, since our observer is an arbitrary point in the plane, we expect a similar recession law to hold with respect to any point in the plane expanding uniformly. So when we take any point like on the plane, so we'll get the same result, and thus proving Hubble's law that our plane is expanding uniformly. So now what we'll consider, like earlier we considered like A and B are at stationary. So now what we'll consider like they are ants and which are moving on the plane while plane is expanding. So then the recession velocities of A and B will consist of two parts: a part due to expansion of the plane, which will satisfy Hubble's law, and second, a part due to which motions of the ants with respect to the expanding plane. Next slide. So we expect the velocity of a galaxy to be given by V is equal to H naught L plus delta V. So where delta V is random part, which can be of order of 1000 km per second. Since it is very low as compared to, to the expansion rate. So yeah, the term H naught L increases with the distance. And whereas the second term delta V is of the same order for galaxies at different distances. So hence we expect H naught L that to be dominant term for the galaxies at large distances, for which we will approach Hubble's law. So what we meant to say here is like the random velocity of the galaxies will not have that much effect to the rate of expanding universe. So like this is like brainstorming kind of thing. Like even though the galaxy is rotating at 1,000 kilometers per second, if we see from our frame, it is very large, very high speed. But from this equation, the universe is expanding at a much higher rate. So again, that question arises like, and we have that dark matter and dark energy conspiracy also. Like in last lecture, I discussed about like, what if that dark matter and dark energy, swallows all our, galaxies and all. So what we observe, how till now, whatever we have known about our universe is from by observing the sky and the galaxies, supernovas and all, like the age of the stars in the galaxies. So what if for coming generations, if dark energy and dark matter swallows everything, how will they come to know about all these things? As we like see, like in coming years we will have technology to do that, but in coming years the thing is like, we cannot, or the coming generation futures cannot observe all these things because it would have been swallowed away. So like this is the most striking idea for astrophysicists and cosmologists. Like they say, like we cannot go to sleep, it haunts us at night. Yeah. So next slide. Yeah, so that's it. That's of us end of our series, Approaching Astrophysics. If you have any doubts.